Hello, everybody. We are back live after maybe more than 16 days break or so for our English stream. So we are back. This is Philo Sapience, where religion meets reason. Welcome to our stream, everybody, and I hope everybody is doing great. What do we have today? Just the same old scrappy little stream. What we're gonna do? We're gonna review a couple of shorts by EF Dawah, not your favorite Dawah channel probably, and not ours as well. But since we didn't have much, and I said let's have a stream. We haven't gotten together in a long time, so it's our time to get together, have a conversation, have a chit chat, and just exchange a little bit of ideas here and there. So yeah, we are back. How's everybody doing? How's Martin? How's KP? Hello, how are you guys doing?
Okay, I'm good.
All well.
All well.
Hello.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Shall we then immediately jump into our first?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Okay. What do we have here? As I said, it's some whatever random short clips that we could find and see, and we can critically analyze these.
So 5 of you had the same Quran, went away, came back 1,000 years
Yes,
later, right?
yes.
Are you saying that five of you had the same Quran, went away, came back 1,000 years
Yes,
later, right?
yes.
Are you saying that 5 of you then had the same way of interpreting it?
No, of course not.
So why is that different?
Because language can be interpreted in different ways. We have British law here.
Yeah, but no, you're all Arabic speaking.
Hold on
It's
a
the
second.
same language.
No, but hold on a second.
Yeah.
We all speak English, don't we?
Yeah.
But when a case goes to court, the two QCs and the judge will do what? They'll interpret the law, won't they? It's in English.
So 5 of you had the same Quran, went away, came back 1,000.
All right. So this is the objection is probably it's not a very strong
It's all.
objection, I would say.
It's all.
I think so. It's done, right? So it's a very weak objection. I just, I randomly picked this one, and this is maybe not as strong an argument. So this girl is an ex-Muslim girl, I think, and she's probably an atheist, agnostic, whatever she is. Her argument is that, and we have raised this argument as well quite a few times, because if this is some God's whatever revelation, Kelly dropped out, I think. Then why is it that everybody's interpreting, everybody's understanding is so different? And I think this doesn't make for a good objection. But what I wanted to point out here was Abbas trying to juxtapose this objection to a revelation from an all-knowing God, all-powerful God, who could have done a much better job, and comparing it with English law or interpretation of a law. I think that's a misplaced analogy. And why? And since Madan is from a legal background, I think Madan will be able to shed much better light than I can. But even though there are interpretations in law, usually the lawmakers make a very what do you call tight sentences, or what do you call very you can't, there's very little room for interpretation usually when you look at the laws, basically. And the lawmakers, whoever makes those laws, even the humans, try to make it so watertight that there's no wiggle room. But then this book you are talking about, there is so much of a wiggle room that you start to think about it, whether it's really written by some divine source, or is it by some humans. It's a thought of some 7th century Bedouins, basically. So that's why I brought it in here. And so the interpretation argument is kind of weak, I think. Yeah.
Okay, Kali,
I think,
Yeah.
So I think I just say that, yes, I mean, what he said about the human-made laws, I think, it's true that humans try, and Philo said that even humans, when they make or write down these laws, they try to make them as clear and airtight as possible. But still, they are humans, right? There is still some room left for improvement. There is still some ambiguity left within them, some certain situation or circumstance which is not captured within them. because these are written by humans. But now let's see what they are comparing it with. They are comparing it with a book which is claimed to be written by God, which I don't know how many times within that book claims to be very clear itself. So if there's a book which is written by God which claims to be very clear, and yet it is ambiguous, well, I guess then it makes me think, or it gives me another reason along with the few others to think that
Yeah.
okay, this is just like any other human written book, which
Yeah.
leaves ambiguities, which leaves circumstances, which misses out a lot of things. So I think that's what it makes me think. So I think what he said is right in terms of human laws, but when he applies it to to a book which is claimed to be written by God, I think it shows that it sort of points out, at least indicates that okay, I think this book was also written by a human being then.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't think I can add too much, but yeah, it's absolutely one of my reasons to thinking that Islam is man-made is precisely the fact that it has ambiguities, and you need years of training, and then there's disputes, unresolvable disputes that haven't actually been resolved. That's why you have all the schools of thought, the madhabs, and you have areas that where textual commentary doesn't resolve the issue. First of all, why do you need secondary interpretation in the first place? But then you have areas where there are differences of opinion, and scholars would say that as well. That in this particular topic, in this particular subtopic, we don't know the answer, but there's differences of opinion. Neither is haram or halal, because we don't know the answer. Whichever sect thinks it's good. But wait a minute, why would that be the case with a book from God? Why would a text be so unclear that there is still a difference of opinion in that area, right? So exactly. So I think this is a point for naturalism, or point for the fact that Islam is like any other human product. The fact that you can compare it to human legal codes and systems, right? In fact, in many respects, I think human legislation or statutory documents or statutes, what we call statutes, like the parliament produces law and it turns into a statute. Legislation, in many respects, is actually much more clear, in my opinion, because I think Islam is even more unclear to the vast majority of human beings, including the scholars, because at the very minimum, if there is a poorly expressed statute, we can go and amend it and correct it. We can amend the primary source. You can't amend Islam, right? All you're going to have is secondary interpretation. You can't amend the Quran, really, anyway. You can't, and hence why it's actually more difficult. Just one example is that what we were talking about in the last stream regarding whether or not child marriage was permissible or something. And people need to perform all these acrobatics to get to the answer that no, child marriage is it. But because there's nothing explicitly said there that yes, it is versus no, it isn't. It's just all these kind of side quests, talking about orphans or something like that, and then you got to interpret. Like, couldn't the book just simply say, like, the author of the book knew that you're going to have arguments in the year 2025 about whether or not child marriage is permissible? Couldn't it just simply say in unequivocal, unambiguous terms? Because you can do that in law. You can do that. We can write it in. Yeah. You couldn't just say simply the following, and in order to reduce the amount of ambiguity, just add so many clauses there that it's just so clear, right? That in no circumstances you cannot engage with a child, and a child is this age, and this will apply in the 21st century, this century. You can make it clearer. Can you still?
Yeah, you can add so many clauses more than just like you said. You can add age clause. You can add physical capability clause. You can add mental capability clauses, and all those things. Right?
Yes.
And yet, what you find is in the Quran, you find the injunctions exactly matching to what 7th century Bedouins would have written, right?
Yes. Because human beings can still engineer it in a better way in order to make it very, very, very clear. Can you still have people who might interpret it wrongly? Yes, you can. But my point is, it's a matter of degree, right? I'm not saying you can get to a perfect. Well, first of all, if it's coming from divine source, then I don't see any reason why, logically speaking, it required a human intermediate interpreter to do anything anyway. I don't see any logical contradiction with the fact that you look at a book and it's obvious to everybody. In fact, that would be a miracle, right? That would be a miracle if only the Quran did not create that sort of ambiguity, right?
Exactly. That would be a different kind of read, you would say, right? It reads different to everybody. It reads different in the sense it reads the same to everybody, but different than the other books, probably.
Yeah, exactly. In the sense that everybody reads it and they get the same answer. We would expect that from a divine book who had divine resources, because he designed our psychology, he designed the text, he wrote he wrote it in. Well, he didn't write it in. Sorry, he authored it and he dictated it. I don't see any logical problem with the fact that if you just look at the book and you have the answers in your mind straight away, without any contextual or textual secondary tasfir and all this stuff, you don't need any of that. That would be a standout case for Islam. But the fact that you need years of scholarship, that you have to read and learn something in a different language, and then even if you become an expert, there's differences of opinion. That seems to be more fitting for not just man-madeness, but 7th century man-madeness, because I've got examples of legal texts that are much more clear, because we can revise it, reinterpret it. It goes back to the parliament, they redraft it, they make it more clear, whereas you can't do that with the Quran. So in terms of a matter of degree, although you can't get a perfect form of legislation, we can improve it. And even then, some people may just misunderstand it or misinterpret it. But the scope of misunderstanding is not as erroneous as it would be when you compare it to the Quran, where the scope of misunderstandings is humongous, and it impacts important things like whether or not I can marry somebody who's younger than 10, the age of 10. Right? People are still wrestling with this today, right? This could have been much more clearer, right? The fact that level of clarity isn't present is indicative to me that this wasn't written by a powerful being, or a super powerful being.
Humans, right, of the 7th century. Yeah. All right, folks, we move on.
I'll just say one more thing. You know what? The books which interpret the Quranic verses or the Quranic injunctions, do Muslims need interpretation for those books as well? Why is no interpretation required for those books?
I was gonna go there, but then sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, what it shows is that these books which interpret Quran are clearer than the Quran itself.
Exactly.
So
yeah, exactly.
I think this makes you really think. These books don't claim, these exegeses don't claim to be clear. The book which claims to be clear several times in itself needs clarification, but the book which is clarifying it does not need any clarification. There are not 100 books interpretations of Ibn Kathir's interpretation. Why not?
Right.
Because it is clear. So I think it shows a sort of how unclear and ambiguous the verses are.
This is kind of an anomaly in a sense. Yeah.
That adds to my point, because it's a matter of degree. The point is, it can be improved upon, and how do we know it can be improved upon?
Exactly.
Because the secondary interpretation does improve upon it, right? In terms of its clarity. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
The fact that the secondary interpretation is clearer than the actual the source shows that the source can be improved on in terms of its clarity. And the fact is, and then the matter is, why couldn't the source itself be as clear as the secondary interpretation at the very minimum? So all these guys might just be thinking that, so a Muslim might be thinking that there can never be a perfect interpretation, because there's always be humans who would, even the clearest thing, like 2 + 2 = 4, people might fight over it. My point is, 2 + 2 = 4 is far clearer, than many of the things in the Quran, right? If in the Quran something was stated clearly as 2 + 2 = 4, then that would be in the hierarchy of clarity closer to perfect clarity. So there might not be perfect clarity, but it'd be closer to perfect clarity. And so it's a matter of degree, not perfection. And when the Quran claims to be perfect, the fact that we can have secondary interpretation that is clearer than the primary source shows that the secondary interpretation is closer to perfect clarity, and that I think fundamentally attacks at one of the core claims of the Quran, which is that it's the clearest book, because it's not the clearest book, because we can think of clearer writings made by humans about it. Yeah. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So I was thinking of taking this long conversation, but then I realized the title or the thumbnail is based on one specific conversation, and if we didn't play it, then
Yeah.
I think
We should
we
take that up first then.
Yeah, we should take that up
Is
first,
it a
and
long
then
one? Is it a long one or is it a short one?
yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. Let me open it. Right, it's not a long one; it's a short one, and I just want to make sure that we take that up first. Hold on, give me just 1 minute, because I copied the wrong link. Okay, now I have the right link. So that's the title that I think we have the thumbnail from, and the title as well, actually. Where do we add it? Okay, so let's run through it.
You can prove science and you don't need to know anything about gravity,
Right.
and you say,
You
I
can feel
dropped
it,
this,
you can see
that's
it.
gravity.
Right, okay. Do you believe that your mother is your mother?
Yes.
Are you convinced of it?
I'm pretty convinced of that.
Have you taken a DNA test?
No, I look a spitting image like my
Okay,
mom.
so there's collaborating reasons
Yeah.
as to why you believe something to be fairly
We have the
certain.
same genetic disorder.
Well, yeah, so these are reasons, right?
Those are, yeah.
Could they all potentially be coincidences, though?
No.
Potentially.
No.
Why not?
Because she is my mother. And
But you haven't got evidence. There's no analytical or scientific evidence.
I would say that my parents consummating would be evidence.
No, but you haven't
witness-
seen that.
You can prove science and you don't need to.
Okay, so this conversation is done, and it's quite baffling. I think this girl, whoever she is, she's probably the title says that she's a Zoroastrian, open-minded Zoroastrian, right? So that's fair. I think she doesn't have very strong arguments when she was questioned. If you listen to this conversation very carefully, you would realize that Abbas has a pretty darn 100% confidence in science. Did you notice that? He says, when she says, is your mother your mother? She says, yes, I'm pretty confident. Have you done a DNA test? So in his eyes, of course, I mean, maybe he didn't realize that, but he's thinking DNA test is the 100% truth, right? And can anyone say that? Martin, if I asked you, you have done a DNA test on your, and it matches 99.99%.
Mm-hmm.
Can you safely say that it's true?
No.
It's a fact that your mom is your mom.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can say that indeed it's a high probability.
No, it's 100%. It's not an absolute truth.
Yeah,
right? It's a very high probability. It's a very high probability.
Yeah,
but it can be wrong. It can be wrong. That's
Right.
the point I'm trying to make here. It's not 100%. It gives you a likelihood. It's a likelihood, but it doesn't give you. So he's assuming a certainty where certainty doesn't exist. Is the point I'm trying to make. So for these guys, whenever they need it, I think they stick to science. They stick science as if, and even later on, he does call that analytically and scientifically it doesn't make sense, right? What does he mean when I think I agree analytical? If you talk about analytical, then we can say that certainty or uncertainty are, you can at least give some glimpse into it using analytical logic, basically, right? Or analytical propositions, basically, but not with the scientific propositions, pretty much, right? So that's kind of the gap that I'm seeing in their approach.
The DNA evidence is based upon the same fundamental premises as the grandmother evidence from testimony. It's just one is a bit stronger than the other. That's it. But they both are on induction, and induction is a fundamental pillar of science, right? And both of them. So the grandmother example. So this is a extreme. We talked about this before, but I have to repeat it again. This is an extreme, gross, erroneous understanding of science This was parroted by Hamza Tzortzis. I don't know where he got it from, because he usually copies William Lane Craig, and I don't think William Lane Craig has ever said anything so horrendous. So I don't know where he got this from, or if it was just Hamza's product of Hamza's mind, right? Which is more likely, I think, right, than anything, right? But this grandmother thing, that you don't need science to confirm that you had a great grandmother, or your mom is your mother, or your brother is your brother. And Hamza gives the grandmother example.
Can I intervene you for a second, Madan? You know why these guys bring this example? Because it makes people uncomfortable. Right? It's like there's one of those what do you call tactics that these guys use so that it makes you really comfortable. One is this, one is insist one. These are the examples they have to bring. I think maybe for this one, at least maybe it's not intentional. For insist one, it is definitely intentional. But here as well, anybody who's really attached to their family, their parents, their mom, dad, whatever, they'll have a very hard time accepting a fact that no, they can't really prove that their mom is really their mom, right? And there's no 100% certain way to prove it. I don't think so. And I mean, as much as I understand about epistemology, I think 100% or absolute doesn't exist, right? About anything.
Well, who would, I don't know why. So these guys kind of, the joke about these guys is that they kind of put the standard to 100% certainty, and then they think that the atheist is looking for 100% certainty when nobody's talking about 100% certainty. So is it straw man to begin with? We're talking about degrees of certainty, degrees of probability, high likelihoods, extremely high likelihoods. Like, for example, is the apple that I left in, let's say I put an apple on a table and walk out of the room and I walk back in, I'm pretty certain that that's the same apple that I left. Now, am I 100% certain? No, because there could have been a really, 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 really clever intruder who came and took it and replaced it. And that's logically possible, and it's physically possible, and it has happened. Pranksters can do stuff like that, right? But I'm pretty confident that it doesn't happen commonly, and it doesn't happen regularly, right? And that's just based on induction, right? And that's a high degree of probability. It's very close to certain, and that's all you need. And that's the sort of evidence that if an atheist is looking for, at least for inductive type of claims, the atheist is saying that the God claims based on God arguments for God doesn't have that sort of inductive support. That's all that we're saying. Nobody's talked about 100% certainty, right? The fundamental misrepresentation is that proving. Let's throw proof out the word. Let's not use the word proof. Demonstrating that
throw it out of the window.
Yeah, demonstrating that your mother is related to you genetically, or is your mother in the first place. Forget genetically, is your mother, or your great grandmother was your grandmother. Knowing that you had a grandmother in the first place, the argument that this is not science is wrong. That is science. That is part of the scientific method, right? It is part of the scientific method to know that you have a great grandmother. It's part of the scientific method to for example, know that you have a mother, because induction is a part of science. And the reason is that reason for that is because induction, we use that sort of thinking in induction as part of all other scientific disciplines, right? Geology, biology, even psychology. We're using these same epistemic pillars of thought. We're using induction, abduction, deduction, etc. So that is not outside of the framework of science. So who said that's not scientific? They made the mistake that we're not applying all of the methodologies of science, or we're not putting on a, let's say, white lab coat and doing tests and so on, right, or something like that. But that's only for issues that require isolating variables and controlling other variables, or for very small scale things in order to get that level of control and precision, right? For example, if you want to know, for example, whether or not this particular drug has this sort of effect on the body, you're going to need microscopes, and you're going to need certain forms of reports, and you're going to need to divide things into two groups maybe, and administer the drug to one group and not administer it to another group, right? This sort of claim in terms of your mother doesn't require that sort of rigorousness, right? That's all, right? Just in the same sense, if you just wanted to know whether or not the apple falls to the ground, one scientific experiment would be just to throw it to the ground. Now, do I need to isolate causes and variables and control things? Not to the same level of precision that you would need for, let's say, a clinical trial. But the throwing the apple to the ground is sufficient to demonstrate the fact that the apple falls to the ground, right? And similarly, demonstrating that human beings have mothers can be known through basic observation, which you don't need a rigorous scientific experiment for, but it's still consistent with the scientific enterprise, right? Why? Because, well, do I need to go into it?
It requires all the same principles of science. Yeah.
Like
it does
all men are
require the same
mortal.
principle.
Yeah, all men are mortal. All men come from other men or other humans, right? So the fact that you have a mother has a high probability. You can do statistical searches for how many people tend to be orphans or poorly adopted and or not genetically related, and it's not very common, right? Most people are more likely to be birthed by their actual mother than not. That's just a claim of probability. And that's all you need. But the DNA experiment, the DNA evidence kind of rests on the same epistemic pillar. For example, the DNA of a man, let's say we got a crime scene and only 1 in 1 million people, one in 10 million people share the same DNA, right? Why is that? Because from our background evidence, the chances of two people sharing those DNA is very low. The reason that we know that the DNA that DNA is unlikely to be for somebody else other than yourself, because it's highly unlikely, right? It rests on the same kind of inductive kind of inductive premise, principles. It's just highly unlikely that there's going to be another person with the same sort of DNA that was on the scene on the same day. It rests on certain beliefs, inductive beliefs that we hold. So the science is also operating in this. The DNA science is operating on the same sort of fundamental pillar, because there's the chances of two people sharing the same DNA is highly unlikely. Therefore, that's why we think O.J. Simpson committed the crime, and it wasn't his body, not his twin, his long lost twin, or some genetic accident, or through probability, sheer law of large numbers, which can exist, by the way. Somebody else in the world could share exactly O.J.'s DNA, but it's highly unlikely to be in the same city, in the same state, in the same room at the same time. Both of them went in there, and or something like that, or he was in there. So if you think about that thinking there, that's the same way we think about the mother as well, right? The chances of you just through coincidence sharing the same likeness, the same personality, to be raised by somebody who proclaims to be a mother and at the same time is lying to you, you can just figure that out by thinking about what are the chances, what is the number of people who are born to adopted parents or foster parents or are orphans, and it might be very unlikely compared to just natural births. That's it, right? The DNA is stronger in the sense that it reduces the scope even more, right? Because I think it's more like I don't know actually the numbers, but I think it's more unlikely that your genetic twin committed a crime than you are an orphan. Yeah, you're adopted, or you're a foster parent that just has been lying to you all your life. That's it. But they're still based on the same probability framework. Yeah.
All right. Kelly, do you want to add something? Yeah.
Yeah. What I would say is that I want to know why is Abbas asking this question, and I mean this question is very common, as Philo said earlier. What is the intention behind asking this question? He has asked why does she
I think
think
it's how can you be certain of these
anything at
kind of
all?
things? Yeah,
Okay, now
anything
there
at
can
all.
be two reasons, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
one can be that okay, you can't be certain of anything or
yeah.
completely, and the other one is I think what the other one is that why do you believe in something? And if someone is questioning, has maybe they're questioning their belief in God, their religion,
I think it's
they would
both.
ask.
Kelly, you
It's both,
yeah,
right?
you got the yeah, it's both, I guess.
So let's cover the first one first, right? You cannot achieve certainty. I guess we can agree with that. So does Abbas believes that as well? Does he agree with that? That we cannot reach certainty about anything? Does he allow that sort of? Is he ready to accept that? Okay,
There
logically
are
speaking,
uncertainties in his
there's a
own
level
worldview.
of uncertainty. There's a level of uncertainty that we all have in any belief that we have. Is Abbas ready to accept that? I don't think so, because I think he would, if you ask him, do you believe in God? He would say, yes, I believe in God 100%. He would not admit that there is any sort of
Wiggle room
tiny
for that.
percentage
Yeah,
and
yeah.
by which he would say that, okay, there is a chance that I might be wrong. He would say, no,
Mhm.
there's no way that I can be wrong. I'm absolutely certain that God exists. Okay. So I think that is one question that I would have. The second point that I want to cover is about if he intends to convince this lady that okay, you shouldn't be that skeptic about your religion, your beliefs, because you're not skeptic about your belief that your mother is your mother or your father is your father. So why are you questioning this? Why are you being skeptic about this? If that is, and if he's pointing out that okay, you're having double standards, like you don't question that, but you're questioning this. If that is his intention, then my question would be: is he really trying to say that? Is he trying to say that okay? Because I think what Abbas would agree to is this: we aren't skeptics. In most of the cases, people aren't skeptic about our fathers being our fathers and mothers our mothers being our mothers, right? Because generally if you don't if any person doesn't have any reason to believe or to any believer to any reason to doubt it, they won't doubt it, they won't even look into it. So they have, and I am ready to admit that they have blind faith for that. They have blind faith in it.
Yeah, I think Kelly, just to interject
Hmm.
in what you're
Hmm.
saying for a second, I think this is to add that possibility of creating a discomfort within these people,
I
right?
agree. Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Because it kind of creates, hey, how can I not be certain about my dad being my or
Hmm.
my mom being my mom, right?
Right. And I'm questioning what is their intention about with creating this doubt or this uncomfort a comfortable feeling. What do they intend with this? If they want, if his intention is to question their skepticism and say that okay, you have double standards. If you're skeptic about this, you should be skeptic about that. You shouldn't be skeptic about this of belief in God or believe in the afterlife and all of that, because you don't you aren't skeptic about your belief in your mother being your mother and your father being your father.
Exactly, exactly.
If that is your question, then is Abbas saying that okay, you shouldn't be skeptic at all? Then if he's arguing for that, then no person according to him should change their religion at all. No person should be skeptic about their own religion, whether they are Christian or a Hindu or any other religion.
Exactly.
They shouldn't, because Abbas cannot just say that okay, just don't be a skeptic about your belief in God, but be a skeptic about your belief in any sort of specific religion. Why? You are saying that it is a double standard because you pointed out that you don't question a certain belief that you have, therefore you should question your belief in God. Well, okay, then I should also not question my belief in a certain religion as well. So if that is
Yeah,
his intention, then again I think it's problematic. So I think it's problematic. It's I don't think it's very it is coming from a very genuine and very intellectually honest place. This question,
position, right?
yeah.
Totally.
So I think because they won't agree if I'll ask him outright. So do you think if somebody admits outright, okay, no, my belief in belief that my father is my father or my mother is my mother is based on blind faith. I don't question it at all. Let's say somebody says that. What would be Abbas's response? I would he say, okay, then why are you questioning this? I guess what I mentioned earlier, right? So,
Right.
and I'm ready to accept. I mean, even if so, let's say if someone asks me, I would say, yeah, I have blind faith. Although there are reasons to believe it. Some of them were pointed out by this lady
I
as well.
think it's Madin,
There are
what
certain
Madin
reasons.
talked. Yeah, what Madin talked about. It's an
Yeah, there are
inductive
certain
reasoning, and
reasons. There are certain inductive
there are
reasons.
stronger inductive
It's yes,
reasonings, and there
exactly.
is
It's
yeah,
I think there are these inductive reasons are similar to why, for example, we trust our friends, right?
yeah,
Let's say a
totally.
friend asks a friend that I have, let's say, I've been working with or I've studied with for a number of years, I've been with him or her for a number of years. I have this level of trust with them. Let's say I'm talking, let's say about my spouse. Have a level of trust with them, that they won't cheat on me, that they won't do this, or they won't sort of harm me in a certain way. If I have built that level of trust based on my past experience with them, well, that is what I'm basing my future experience with them. That is what I'm basing my beliefs about them. So that is it's inductive reasoning that I'm basing my beliefs on. So is now then, if it is inductive reasoning, then upon which now Abbas wants us to, let's say, he wants to convince us that okay, you cannot be certain. So just like you use inductive reasoning to believe that your father is your father and your mother is your mother and that your spouse is loyal and your friend is trustworthy. So just like you use inductive reasoning for that, and you don't arrive at 100% certainty, and yet you, for all pragmatic and for all pragmatic reasons, you do accept it, right? So then, and similarly, he's saying that we should use similar kind of reasoning to believe in God like that. But if I use that kind of
See,
reasoning, I
the
don't think it
level
will
of
benefit them.
inductive reason, yeah, the
Exactly, I don't
level
think
of
it will benefit
inductive
them because
evidence doesn't match up.
exactly, and then the thing
I
is,
think
okay,
you, if you were
if you want me to use inductive reasoning, let me ask Abbas a question. If I ask Abbas, okay, what makes you think that certain person is evil? What will make you think? Just tell me based on your experience. Let's say, I ask Abbas, you're looking at a person's sort of behavior and what he has done, and what will make you think that a certain person is evil? Well, you might say that, okay, they are causing harm to someone. They're not sort of if they have they can easily help someone and yet they don't help them. They are in fact causing harm to them. They're causing them immense pain. All of these things, I think. So all reason using reasonable inductive sort of reasoning, you would argue that that person is evil. Okay, based on that kind of reasoning, I would believe that God is evil
right,
because
yeah,
I see that
totally
if God is there, then this is the kind of thing that he's allowing and causing even based on your own book.
agree,
So if I use inductive reasoning, that okay, then I'll believe that God is evil. If you want me to use inductive reasoning, so
exactly.
again, so I think it's not what the kind of argument that Abbas is trying to put forward. I don't think that it can go in his favor in any way.
And I think we also highlighted one of the points here that every inductive evidence gives a certain weightage to your confidence, right? Let's say if I were to say, what would be your answer to the question that the sun will rise from east tomorrow? I think without a heartbeat, your answer would be east, right? I mean, yes, it will rise from the east tomorrow, right? And that's without a heartbeat. So your confidence might be like 99.99999 recurring percentages, right? But
Right.
if your question is like, how confident are you that you trust your friend won't betray you? And then you would say, oh no, I trust that friend almost close to 99%. But if you be really honest and you really think through it, you'll say, well, maybe 99.9%, but there's no recurring nine over there, right? Because we have seen friends betray their closest of friends, right? There have been instances,
Exactly. Yes.
people who have, seen the life enough. So the confidence is based on the level of inductive evidence at hand, right? So with these kind of things, when he's asking a question whether your mom is your mom or not, I think in general you have this tendency to think that parents don't lie to their kids, right?
Right.
And then
Yeah. Can I just say something though? So I think one of the things that he's trying to possibly, we don't know exactly the aim of Abbas. I thought he's trying to say that not everything requires science. Like, for example, believing that your mom is your mom is just obvious, and you don't need science to do that, or evidence. And there's no such analytical. He said at the end, there's no analytical, there's no technical, there's no scientific. Actually, there is. The the inductive argument that all men are mortal, or the sun comes up and goes down, are the same forms of reasoning that is behind.
So inductive reasoning is the bedrock of science as well.
Yes, exactly. So the same sort of inductive evidence that establishes that all men are mortal is also the same type of inductive evidence that establishes that your parents are your parents, right? And the degree might be different because whilst all men are mortal, and we don't have an exception to that so far, we do have exceptions to your mother being your actual mother, because there are cases of situations where your mom isn't your mom. You've been adopted. You've been lied to. But those are not that's the exception, not the norm. And therefore, you do have reasons to think, you do have good reasons from the background evidence to think you're most likely your mom is your mom, right? So that's what I thought he's trying to say, that these are outside of the sphere of science, and yet we have beliefs that are outside of the sphere of science, and therefore science can't be the arbiter of.
Totally. I think one of those points as well, maybe third point, and probably the primary point, maybe is to bring that up as well.
Yeah, if, however, he's trying to say that we're not skeptical about everything, or we use other forms of kind of intuitions or something, almost like a magical form of thinking, that not everything can be grounded on analytical thinking and all this stuff, but you still believe it, or something like that, that there's no such evidence for these things, but we still believe it, or something like that, or that sort of kind of claim, this kind of intuition, like it's this these are the intuitive beliefs that will be. I think he's trying to, as you mentioned, point out the discomfort or the embarrassment or the humiliation that you'd feel at the idea that your mom is not your mom. Yeah, and you won't go around questioning that. Some other theists argue, make a similar argument about love, right? You can't prove that. How do you prove that you love somebody, or how do you know somebody loves you back? You don't, and you still believe it. In other words, certain beliefs shouldn't require evidence. I think that could he be saying something like that? Maybe he is. That it comes from.
Maybe it's a combination of all three things, and we don't know exact his prime motive to bring it up, but maybe subconsciously all three.
Yeah, or it's improper to ask for evidence that your wife loves you. Yeah, you don't need to take her to a laboratory and get a brain checked, and you don't need to do any sort of scientific wranglings or anything like that. You just believe it, almost blindly, right? And there's something about that. So clearly, we hold some very, very firm foundational beliefs that we live our life by. That doesn't require the scientific standard and rigor. So science shouldn't be the placeholder to determine beliefs, particularly these sort of things. And the same can be applied to religion. Same can be applied to belief in God, right? Your mom is your mom. The wife loves you back. You don't need scientific evidence for those sort of things. Let's just go with that for a minute. But and testimony, like Kylie said, your friend, you'll trust your friend, and through their testimonial evidence, maybe through what you've seen of them a little bit, but sometimes maybe even blindly. And Kylie wants to say that sometimes he has blind belief, and I actually agree with that. A lot of human beings hold blind beliefs. So my first thing to that, I would say, is that if you're a proper, consistent philosopher, instead of going, "Oh, I hold this many blind beliefs here, and therefore I should hold my blind belief in God as well," is like what's the fallacy? Is it tekukwa?
Tokokwe.
Yeah, tokokwe fallacy. I don't pronounce that. Yeah. Is that since I hold so many other erroneous beliefs or erroneous ways of getting to the truth, and I don't consistently apply it, therefore I should continue my erroneous quest to hold more erroneous beliefs. But that's not correct. There's two ways to get around the tukoko. One is to go, in order to make it consistent,
right? One is to go, all right, I'm a hypocrite when it comes to not looking for evidence elsewhere and only looking for God. Therefore, in order to remedy this hypocrisy, I could loosen my standards of evidence and just go, you know what, I'm going to also have blind belief in God. The other way to remedy is to go, actually, wait a minute, I hold these blind beliefs and I hold God to a particular standard. Maybe I should hold these other blind beliefs to a particular standard as well. And reality is, we do in fact suffer a lot by trusting what we thought was loyal friends. We do in fact suffer a lot getting into dysfunctional, damaging relationship with human beings because we thought we were in love with them or they loved us back. In fact, we can actually concede where this is a space where human beings are highly ignorant, right? And they don't rely on evidence. And if they had relied on evidence, they may be better off, right? If they did look for better ways. And this is why in psychology and so on, there are actually studies out there that help us kind of determine what would be a better partner, yeah, in certain situations, right? Like if you look for such certain cues in another human being, the statistical relationship between the discovery of those cues and those individuals more likely to be X, Y, or Z per person. Whereas people who just blindly believe in things, they're misled by trusting. Particularly, a lot of women would complain, know exactly what I'm talking about, when they're falsely lied to by other men saying that they love them, etc., when they didn't. They just wanted to get into the bed with the woman. So, in fact, we're actually highly erroneous in those scenarios, and actually it would be better if we did rely on a little bit more evidence. And we do. We therefore ask for more evidence in terms of dating and courtship, and we try to kind of get to know the other person. Even if it's imperfect, it's better than just, let's say, blindly accepting somebody who says they love us. We look for signs and look for observational evidence to help us. But there's one thing that I wanted to say. There's something called decision theory. I don't know if you guys know about it. Decision theory or evidence-based decision theory. And in decision theory, I'm not an expert on this topic, so I might be going off a little bit in an area where I don't know much about. But my shallow understanding of decision theory is that sometimes when we make decisions, it's not merely about whether or not something is actually true and we have 100% certainty or something like that. Sometimes we do things not based on we knowing that something is true, but we look at the extent of the amount of evidence that we have and the risk it will take for us to commit to that and behave accordingly towards it, right? What is the risk, right? So, for example, I like using this following example. Now, I don't believe in untested medications, right? That are not reliable. I think these are not very reliable, and I won't invest my resources into it. But is there any point that I would? Suppose I am on my deathbed, and suppose I've exhausted all known forms of medication that are established by the medical community, and then a homeopath or some alternative medicine quack job or whatever you want to call it comes along, and I already hold the belief that this is not true. I know because it's not been scientifically tested. I know that it doesn't really have any laboratory evidence to show there's any clinical benefits, but this might be a small chance. Now, according to decision theory, or very many different variants of it, but some of the most plausible ones, you ought to make that decision in that situation that you should just try it, not because it's true, but because in terms of the risk benefit calculation, the risk at that point where you're on your deathbed
is very low. Very low.
You may as well try it. Just in case in that small negligible likelihood, because we've tested it already, there's 0.1% chance of it succeeding to help you, right? And in a normal day, you wouldn't spend £100 on it, but in your deathbed, you should, because especially if there's no other competing reasons that you have to preserve your money, maybe. If all things being equal, you don't need to leave money for your family, you don't need to leave money for your children. It might actually be the best choice in that circumstances, according to decision theory, to invest that last bit of your wealth, on all forms of quiet. Now, does that mean you believe in it? No, you don't, right? You don't believe in it. You're just taking a chance based on probabilities, based on risk calculations. And that is also, I think, that model, what I'm using there, is also the same model we use sometimes intuitively and sometimes not intuitively when we trust human beings as well. We take risks.
We don't know for certain that Philo or Kylie is actually going to be completely honest in every endeavor. You don't know me apart from, you know, our interactions on these sort of things, you know.
I'm after Madan's money.
Exactly. But you take calculated. You don't have firm beliefs about things. I don't have firm beliefs about what my friends can do. You know, sometimes I do. Sometimes I've seen it through lots of inductive evidence. Track record of my friend is amazing, and therefore I can trust him in this domain, right? But in something else, I might not. But the risk of following his decision in something else, I might do, not because I know through a positive belief that he's telling the truth, but I'm willing to just accept it because the risk of him lying might be, even if he is, sorry, the risk of him lying, the result of that risk might be low. Like, let's say if I trust my friend and he says, take a left. Now, sorry, the wording is wrong there. Let's say I listen to my friend's advice, but I don't have an epistemic belief that he's correct. I explore his opinion here. He says, take a left. I think is down there. Now, I have no trust behind that he's going to be right. But so I can do a calculation in my head. What is the risk of me following this advice, right, if he's wrong? The risk is that I wasted 5 minutes. That might be an acceptable risk, right? Decision theory may say that that's just an exception, particularly when there's no other option, right? You may as well try, because your friend, let's say you don't know shit. You don't know anything, right? You don't have a map. Every other option seems a bit weird, but your friend is saying take a left. But your friend is not a great navigator. So you have low confidence that he's correct. But you may as well take that risk, right? Based on decision theory. You don't have any epistemic belief, however, that he's right, but you just do it anyway, right? A lot of our beliefs are like that. They're pragmatic, rational, risk, cost-benefit, very, very quick cost-benefit calculations that we do. And when we follow it like that, sometimes we do sometimes we get it wrong, sometimes we get it right. But I think that's how we operate and proceed through life. We don't just firmly believe that my best friend is, is going to be right about everything, or even if he has a track record showing that he's generally honest, and if he strays away from a different area. Let's say my friend usually gives me great advice about life and everything, and usually I see successes in his advice. But then he starts talking about something medical. Well, I have no reason to think that his track record is going to be enough to establish that his medical advice is correct. But I might start thinking through decision theory of what should I do? Should I take his advice or not? And I think that's how we operate, right? If you do any of that with God, I think the closest thing that you kind of get to a pragmatic risk-benefit thing is something like Pascal's wager, right? Which is, we've shown that it's flawed. The gamble doesn't work in Pascal's wager. And all other things, like whether you should believe in the fine-tuning argument, we can do the same sort of risk-benefit calculation of whether or not we should, because arguments like fine-tuning argument, contingency argument, they're actual epistemic claims. They want you to firmly believe in something, like God exists, right? But we still use risk-benefit calculations on that as well, cost-benefit calculations on that as well, decision theory, Bayesian reasoning to see, should I put some money on this belief? And my submit that the counter arguments against like contingency argument and stuff are so strong that it doesn't give us that reason. Give us those reasons, yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
So I understand that, but yeah, I mean, there's so many things going through my mind at the moment. It's difficult to get everything out. So no, I don't actually agree with that.
So how would you phrase it then? Not a series of dominoes. I mean, a series of cause and effect, unguided. Would that be sufficient to explain it in that way?
Okay. So
I think just to give you a background, this conversation is between a naturalist, as you can see in E.F. Dawah, and what they are asking is the strongest argument for Islam, basically, right? And then I think the strongest arguments that they are talking about is contingency argument, but we are going to find out, and we have dealt with contingency argument quite a few times. I think both Mahad and KP, and I think I can say a little bit about myself as well. It's our favorite argument first, and I think each one of us has dug through it very, very deeply, right? Maybe I might be wrong, but I think I can safely say that Khali and Madan, both of you have dug through it very deeply. And we all consider it to be not working all the way through. At least it doesn't pass through. It's maybe a strong argument, but it doesn't pass through as an argument for the existence of God, right? So that's where this argument is basically. So also one thing to notice, because I listened to it a little bit before, choosing it, and I realized that these guys, Abbas and Imran, and especially Abbas, doesn't have an inkling of exactly how many flavors of contingency arguments are there, right? So you'll see them flipping over different concepts of contingencies and not knowing which one to use where. So just listen to it carefully.
So the thing is that a lot of naturalistic philosophers would say that, let's say T equals 0, the moment of the Big Bang, the moment that this universe was instantiated. Okay. Yes, your domino analogy begins at that moment. The problem, or the difference that we have, the divide that we have, comes in what began that domino effect at T equals 0.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
and there has to be something that precedes T equals 0, doesn't there?
Well, let's imagine that there is.
Well, there has to be.
Some philosophers would say that there isn't, or that we cannot.
Yeah,
know,
I know,
blah,
but then you'd have to. Yeah, I understand, but then you'd be arguing from an absence of everything, including any potential reality.
Yeah.
Came an existence and a reality without even having the potential.
Yes.
What I'm
zero
saying,
potential. Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
But there has to be a potential, otherwise you can't have T equals 0 coming into existence.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So the point I'm trying to make to you is, that's why I'm trying to ask you, in terms of why it's more reasonable from your perspective, that it's an unguided process, because whatever this necessary existence is, since it's non-conscious, since it doesn't guide effects happening from it, it had an eternity for every effect, every possible effect to have come about.
Okay, an eternity for every possible effect to come about in which state? From T equals 0
from any
or
state,
before?
From any state, because we're talking about infinity.
Right.
Now, our universe came into existence 14.3 or 13.7 or 40 billion years, however long ago you want to say. But it came about at a particular point in time in history, which was 13.7 or 14.3 billion years ago. So to me,
just wanted to pause here and just have a smirk over here, at least smile a little bit. See the sentences these guys are using. They don't even understand what they're talking about. They just don't know jack s, basically, right? I mean, what the hell? There has been eternity, eternal time. Since eternity, there would have been so many instances that all those would have realized by now. What the hell does that even mean? Come on.
That seems more likely that this was a conscious being deciding on a specific time when this universe was going to come into existence. Had it been an unguided process through the law of entropy and everything else, what we would have had is every possible effect would have already taken place, and there would be no matter and energy or anything else effectively even registerable that you could register, simply because it would just dilute itself into an infinite space of time and space. But we...
All right, so I'm not quite sure Abbas has any understanding of either science or even philosophy or even logic. I mean, listen to it. Every effect would have taken place and there would be nothing. What nothing? If every effect would have already taken place, there would be every effect that would be still taking place, and there would be every other effect that is still going to take place, because it's an eternity.
Yeah.
So if it's, I don't know what he's trying to say, but I think he's trying to say that it would have happened already.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it doesn't take a 5-year child or 10-year child to say that, you know, if
Doesn't the same issue exist with a God, because it would have happened
yeah,
from eternity?
same is going to happen with the God as well, right? Exactly.
I don't see. Yeah, I mean, I think we spoke about this as well. I mean, if an effect is if an effect has taken place from eternity, if the issue is that, but we have the Big Bang happening in a particular point or something, right? Again, these are all assumptions. I don't think that there's any evidence suggesting that the Big Bang. First of all, we're not sure that the universe had a beginning.
No, there'll be Madan, there'll be Big Bangs happening from eternity. That's what it is gonna be. And this is particular instance of Big Bang, which we are observing, which in an eternity from now will become an eternity in past. But there is an eternity in future, which is still to happen, and those are gonna observe from their present perspective, and gonna see us and past of their perspective. Maybe if eternity, if God is on a timeline, basically, right? Or whatever you call this reality is outside time, then probably there is no time. But then there is an order, right? There is an order in some sense of eternity, at least, right? Because we fall short of verbs or nouns, whatever you use to define, or tenses rather, I would say, to define what is past and what is future and what is present in an eternity where there's no time. I think all the words are meaningless because they are probably happening at the same time, maybe, right? But maybe all of them are happening simultaneously.
But I mean, the idea that if a cause exists from eternity, then its effect would be from eternity as well. That is equally applicable to both,
well, right?
Theistic or atheist.
I mean, how would having a will solve that problem? It's not quite clear to me.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what and before Kylie speaks, and Abbas also says that if you have something from eternity, you have every possibility to manifest. That is only on the assumption that you have every possibility to manifest. Now, you could be an atheist who thinks there was something. It's logically possible for something to be eternal. It's logically possible for that thing to be non-mind. It's logically possible also. So this is another assumption, that for it to have infinite potential and every other possibility. Yeah, then it follows that all possibility. But it's also possible that it can be eternal. And it can also be. It's also possible that that thing that is eternal is a non-mind, non-personal thing, entity, and it's also possible that it has limits. Eternity. So when you talk about eternity, you might think, for example, you talk about in terms of its temporality, in terms of its time and duration. It was there from eternity, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was eternal in its powers or something like that, right? It was infinite in power or anything like that. No, it could have definite limitations.
Totally. I mean, the only thing you can know from that is just that it's not bound by time. That's about it.
Yes, exactly. So therefore, the idea that you have every possibility manifesting, that's not necessarily the case, because there might be hard limits into what it is possible of creating or causing or affecting, if you want to call it. So I'm not sure about that. But even if you had that assumption, let's say you had the assumption that it has eternal possibilities, and then every other possibility would have manifested, right? We don't know what happened before t equals 0. There's until science. We don't have the science, which Abbas is assuming is correct here, which says that there was a hard beginning to the universe, and that's definitively concluded or anything like that. Again, the Big Bang is just the known. If you go backwards, all the way back to a one point, and it goes back to that point, and we don't know anything beyond that. It doesn't say that there was no beginning. It doesn't say that there was a beginning, and it doesn't really say that there was no beginning. And very many models suggest that it could have been eternal. But if we do go with that, there was something eternal that caused the Big Bang, and it had infinite possibilities,
then it's very possible. It's very possible that we do have the ocean of all those many possibilities manifested already, right? And that would be consistent with, let's say, a multiverse, right? We could be just one of those possibilities. I don't see what he's talking about, right? There could be many universes at various many lengths and durations, 14 billion years. It doesn't have to be 14. It could be in various non-universes, and all those possibilities are manifested. Obviously, we would find ourselves in the one that's possible for us.
Yeah,
Right?
I think Martin, what he's when he's trying to get to, when he's presenting his argument, there is an implicit assumption of time within his own statement. He says there won't be anything, all the possibilities would have already exhausted, basically, or would have taken place. And that's assuming time within within a realm which doesn't have any time. But I'll bring KP in here, KP, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I guess you guys have said a lot on this already, but yeah, I think the basic mistake that Abbas was making earlier was saying that the universe came into existence 14 billion years ago. Okay, and then he said, but this was at some point in time, despite the fact that naturalists said that this is time zero. So even those who are claiming that time sort of the universe started to, or began to exist, I think they're also, if we take their word, I think they're also claiming that time began with that. And this is similar to the claim that Muslims make, that time began with creation. Now my question is, if time began, and I think we have discussed this several times, if time began, the exact same problem that Abbas is pointing out in a naturalistic worldview would apply to the theistic worldview as well. If time began to exist at some point, then you are already implying that the timeline already existed, on which at which on that timeline at some point time started to exist. Otherwise, saying that time began to exist means nothing, because beginning implies not existing prior to that beginning, right? If this is what Abbas is implying. So if you're saying time began to exist,
Then you're
that
implying
means
time.
then you're
Exactly
implying
the point I was trying
then
to
you are
say, right?
implying time existed before time existed, which
Yeah,
is
that's so
which is
absurd.
circular. Then an infinite regress this would result in infinite regress, which Abbas I think does not believe in. So even the exact same problem would apply in case of a theistic worldview. I don't know why Muslims generally, most of them don't see it, and there are Muslims who understand this problem with the Kalam cosmological argument, this beginning to exist problem, and they don't claim, there are Muslim scholars, there are very few of them, it's almost a fringe, in fact I think it is a fringe, who believe that yes, the creation is also eternal because of this very reason. And
Right.
because of that, this argument, they don't argue this from the point of view of time, that or beginning of something, right? They don't argue from that perspective, they argue it from the contingency perspective of, the modal contingency,
Yeah, the
or
model.
that okay, it couldn't have been any other way or something like that, which is a
Right.
different, which we deal with differently. But at least the time one, this particular version, they don't use it because of this
Right.
very
Right.
weakness. So I think, yeah, this
I think
problem
this is the old Kalam cosmological argument, and I think more sophisticated philosophers probably have parted ways with it. I think even Ghazali realized that, right? That this was problematic. I'm not quite sure Ghazali
Yeah,
realized it
I
or
don't
not.
remember
Yeah,
which
yeah.
one was it, but yeah, there
But
was one,
one
at
of the
least one
early
popular. I
the
think it's even,
classical philosopher.
I think it was at least Ibn Sina, or at least I think he believed in it. I guess so. Maybe I'm wrong,
Yeah,
but yeah,
Ibn Sina believed in it, right?
yeah,
Al-Kindi, Ibn
eternal,
Sina,
yeah,
they believed in it, right? But then
yeah,
probably by
eternal,
the time of Al-Ghazali, they parted ways with it.
yeah,
Yeah, but this is as I said earlier in my introduction to this video, that I think all three of us at least are highly fascinated with this argument, even though we know that it doesn't pass through it. But there's so much to think through it, and you can always, whenever you go through it and think through it, you can always find something new about it, right? And yeah, so I thought that's why I'll bring it in. Shall we move on then?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
We see a universe that has a beginning at a specific time, arranged in a specific way, with specific laws, etc., etc., etc. And so for me, it seems like a more reasonable argument to suggest that the necessary existence actually makes a decision when to bring things into existence. And it can't be an unguided process that could have happened infinitely in the past. I don't know, do you think that's a reasonable argument I've made?
I mean, it's a reasonable argument from a theistic point of view.
No, not from a theistic point of view, from any point of view.
It's reasonable.
Yeah. So that's all I'm saying. That's our stance. And the point is that not only does it explain this, the beginning of the universe and everything else, but even things from our own lives in terms of value, whether it's a value of a child as opposed to a rock, morality, what's good for us, what's bad for all of these things are not explained by a unconscious necessary existence, but in fact a conscious, intelligent, necessary existence that guides that process and then helps its creation to differentiate between whether what the Israelis are doing in Gaza is actually an abhorrent crime or just a rearranging of atoms.
Okay.
Because I just finished, because in reality, without the necessary existence being conscious and guiding that process, you can argue what's happening in Gaza is simply a rearrangement of atoms. It's morally just as bad as smashing a rock. But it's only when you have that necessary existence, which is a conscious being that teaches that moral code or morality, that gives you the ability to decipher all of what reality is for us as human beings. Otherwise, it's just do as you want, whatever feels right for you, go for it. So there's so much more, I think, that adds to that that stance that we have as a I think a rational theist would have.
Okay.
All right. Any takers? Martin, you go.
He's just marrying various different arguments, marshalling it together. He just merged the.
It's a mishmash of arguments, right?
He kind of merged the moral arguments.
Moral argument. I don't know. He just doesn't have a coherent, argument, basically, right? One single coherent.
Whatever works. He's doing Dawah, so whatever works. He's just kind of.
Yeah, whatever. Just throw everything at a guy and then whatever sticks, right?
Yeah.
It's that kind of an argument. First thing first, I think I want to touch upon that point that he makes always, and this is, you have to have this conscious being because that makes decision. All these verbs that he's using, makes decision, conscious being, acts, and all those things, right? These are all verbs used in a temporal reality. I don't think any one of us has any idea of all these verbs acting in a temporal reality and what it means even, right? I mean, how would you say that? What does act mean in a timeless reality? At least I don't know. Maybe I'm too dumb to understand what it means. What is acting? What is taking a decision mean in a non-temporal reality? I don't think. I mean, in my mind at least, making a decision requires both space and time. Not even just time alone or space alone. It requires both of them at least. For morality as well, I think. I mean, since he's talked about morality, I don't think it requires you to have a cosmic daddy to guide you as to what your moral intuitions tell you to do. Maybe whatever you do sometimes may be harmful. I mean, somebody could question what is so good about killing millions and millions of animals on a certain day just because God said so. Is that really moral? But he thinks it is moral because God commanded it. But is that it? If God commanded to kill all humanity, would he do that? So maybe I used the wrong word, unaliving. Would he do that? Would that be moral then? At what point commands from a God will become immoral? I don't think he has an answer. I think he can't say that there's any point at which it becomes immoral. There's no point as such, right? So he has to, on a divine command theory, he'll always have to say no, because God said so. It has to be moral, right? And I think we have spoken about it quite a few times as to, I think we have said God is amoral, God is immoral, and we from outside can at least claim pretty safely that God is amoral. I think Kelly and I have spoken about it quite a few times in our Hindi Urdu streams, and as well as probably in our English streams as well. And that's exactly the same reason why we say that, because God can command anything, and it will still just be applicable, and those same moral injunctions won't apply on him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, another the thing about what he said, you'd expect the necessary being to be a conscious creator because of the specific kind of arrangement and the specific time and the specific, right? He's misreferencing or misquoting or omitting the evidence, right? Misrepresenting the evidence or omitting significant amounts of evidence. It's like going into a palace, right, and looking at the single room or storeroom and saying this place is really bad, or this place is really small, it's just tiny. No, you're missing the forest for the trees, right? That room is small, but have you looked at the rest of the palace? It's massive, right? You can't generalize from that. And he's misreferencing or misquoting or omitting the rest of the evidence. Indeed, there are specificities, but what we're talking about here, we're not talking about the Big Bang just turned into a Big Bang happens and then we have the Earth. We're talking about a vast, empty, almost chaotic, largely dangerous, lethal universe that had to perpetuate through several almost blind events and death and destruction, particularly on planet Earth, and then 4 billion years of evolution on this tiny little, if it was an ocean, it won't even be a drop in the ocean, right? The galaxy, where it was habitable for conscious creatures to form over again 4 billion years of highly lethal evolution. I would say lethal evolution, given the amount of suffering that had to happen, then to lead to sort of orderly forms of animals, right, that can form societies, in their various different ways, right, where the rules of morality, cooperation, and charity and altruism is completely aligned with how morality would evolve on a blind evolutionary process, predicted by blind evolution, right? So all of these things are evidence for naturalism, right? On theism, we don't need all these interstellar events, celestial events to unfold for billions of years, trillions of years, over a vast expanse of trial and error, and then eventually more trial and error on this planet Earth to form creatures whose morality is hit and miss, for the most part, right? Whose morality is very hedonistic, very chauvinistic, very primitive, very my clan versus your clan for millions and millions and millions of years, right? That is evidence for blind evolution of the universe as well, right? Versus a omnipotent. Again, he's misquoting everything. He's just saying a mind. No, he believes in a particular mind. He believes in a supernatural, all good, all merciful mind. And it doesn't fit that evidence. I'm sorry, it doesn't, because God could have just skipped all that. God has several possibilities. On naturalism, there's only a few ways to get life. On naturalism, you would expect a long haul process to eventually form a brain that can suffer. On the God thesis, it doesn't predict that at all. It predicts all the other forms of things. Heaven, God can create something instantaneously. God doesn't even need to create. He's perfect. He doesn't need to create anything in the first place. When you look at all the totality of the evidence, total evidence, not misrepresenting the evidence or omitting the evidence. When you look at the total evidence,
the evidence fits naturalism better than theism. Yeah.
All right, Kelly.
Yeah, I think Mahadan has said quite a bit, so I think I don't have anything to add.
Okay, we'll move on then. All right.
Okay. So can I
please
make my case?
Cool. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So heard everything that you said. As a theist, I would have agreed with pretty much everything that you said. I think so. By me acknowledging that it's a rational point of view to hold, I felt that I was a rational person, and I still am. I think I am. I was a rational person being a theist. I believe that both of you are rational people, and the majority of humans and theists are rational. So I can't say that it's an irrational position to hold. So by me granting that's a rational position to hold, it doesn't necessarily follow that I'm going to agree with every single other step that you're going to add on from that position. So I basically just want to go back to that dichotomy that we had, right? And explain the other side of the story. So just in terms of the contingency argument that there was on Dawah Wise, premise 2 is introducing a necessary being into premise 2. That is the point of contention that pretty much every single atheist is going to have. Because by introducing this being, okay, there is absolutely no foundation for what that being is. There's no explanation of what the being is. You're not saying it could be green leprechauns, being. I mean, it could be a unicorn, right? So by introducing that statement is not going to be a good argument for an atheist, because we reject the assumption that there is some kind of necessary being in where? In a supernatural realm, in the natural realm, inside all of reality, outside of all of reality? Is it subject to time? Is it not subject to time? There's no, by introducing that, you immediately kill the argument for any atheist that is considering this as a good argument for against atheists.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to let Dr. Imaan come in there, but I'm just going to make 2 points before I allow Dr. to please come in there. One is that we need to stop being dogmatic, which is that an atheist will reject this simply because they are atheists and they have to look for a naturalistic explanation. Therefore, any explanation that goes outside of that comfort zone is automatically rejected. That becomes dogma. And I think I would be honest enough to say that people can be dogmatic from religion and non-religious stances, but dogma doesn't help here. The other thing is that how would we know what this necessary existence is? Would we know it simply by using our rationale, or would we know it if this necessary existence actually connected with its creation and informed its creation about its reality? And we would, as theists, argue that the only way of knowing about the necessary existence, of course, from our perspective, this would be God Almighty, this would be Allah, is by Allah telling us about himself. And now you could ask the question, but how do you know?
How quickly can things change? From our perspective, when he was talking to him, he demanded him from every other perspective. From our perspective, we think it can't come from anything other than Almighty revealing himself, right? Or revealing his own code, or would, interact with the humans. I think that demands an evidence of itself. All right, Kelly, do you want us to move further into the conversation, or do you have any comment over here?
No, I think I have to step away for 5 minutes, but yeah, not right now.
Okay.
Which text, which religion, and what have you to follow? Well, that's a process, right? That's a process of elimination, of investigation, of contemplation, and then you go with wherever the evidence hopefully takes you, if you're a rational person. And for us, we would argue that would be the Quran and that would be Islam, right? But I'd let the doctor, inshallah, continue with that. But I'd let you come back to what I've just said, and then the doctor can continue, inshallah.
Welcome. Sorry, what's your name? Because we've got a naturalist here. Can we call you something? You can make something up. It doesn't have to be your actual name.
Call me T.
T. Okay, T. So T, thank you for coming on, and I appreciate you saying good words about Ijaz, and we wish him well. I'm not sure, to a certain extent, the formulation of the argument that you provided from the other stream, which I haven't seen, it's very truncated of the actual argument that's presented usually for contingency. I don't agree that with some of your conclusions about leprechauns, etc., because I think leprechauns probably require explanation, but we won't go into that. So I just want to understand your position. Do you on the contingency argument, which we don't want to confuse with the argument from causality or the Kalam cosmological argument, do you accept that there has to be an external explanation of all contingent things? Is that something you arrive at, or you don't?
Sure. And I will even grant a necessary something necessary to ground the contingent things. Sure.
Okay. And so just to summarize where you are then, because this is really the stage one, isn't it, of the contingency argument, of these types of arguments. So things exist. If everything exists is contingent, then there would be no external explanation of the contingent things. There isn't an external explanation of contingent things, because otherwise you will never be able to explain them. And therefore not everything is contingent, and there has to be something non-contingent. And therefore that something is necessary, a necessary existence.
100% agree with that. Yeah,
we're absolutely fine. So what we're saying is that there is something which is an explanation for all things which are contingent, which itself is not contingent. That means in itself it requires no external explanation.
Yeah.
And that is the foundation from which everything that we see, everything which is contingent that comes, universes, whatever we're thinking about. So there's some things, can we do, so that this is the first stage, so I'm great that that's the case. The second stage is to then try and almost do like...
All right, Martin, Kelly. Kelly, are you back? Maybe still not at the seat. So first thing first, so he has already sketched out the first, what do you call, the first part of the contingency argument, right? The necessary existence. And I'm not quite sure. I think Kelly probably by and large agrees to first part or the first block of contingency argument, but doesn't agree with the second part, which is from a necessary existence, how do you get to God? And I have my own problems agreeing to this premise or the first part as well of contingency. I don't necessarily take it. I think it seems more plausible to me that maybe there is a necessary existence, but any of the arguments that Emaan has so far sketched out, they are non-compelling to me in believing that there has to be. I mean, he hasn't given a very strong reason to say why there has to be an explanation for all the contingent things. I don't think that belongs here, right? And furthermore, he's using contingency for explanations and then probably confusing it with the modal contingency argument, right? And he's himself is saying that, oh, no, we don't have to use the Kalam one or maybe the other ones. But the explanation one is more, in line with his thought process, but then he's probably not sketching it out as well as he should have. So yeah, I'm all in all, I think I'm not very well convinced with this. I think there could be, there doesn't have to be an explanation for all the contingent things. Maybe there are things which have no explanation.
Well, you could just say that every contingent thing has another contingent thing to explain it.
Yeah, that's also a possibility, right? Even if, this is like going far into the infinity, right? So even if you don't believe in infinities, you can come to a standstill where there are, that those end root contingencies don't have any explanation. Yeah.
Yeah, I can just reiterate what I said before. I mean, the idea of something can be possibly different, and therefore, since it was could have been possibly different, something must have created it to be in a particular way versus another way, is, I think, false. Simple as that. So I might be rejecting the principle of sufficient reason entirely here, right? That contingent things are that which I agree with the demarcation between the philosophical language that is used to highlight the differences between what is a contingent thing versus a necessary thing. I absolutely agree with the demarcation between the things. What I don't agree with the idea is that we can identify what is actually necessary and what's actually contingent. One, two, that the fact that I think, for example, I know it's necessary that a triangle must add up to 180 degrees. I know it's not necessary that I exist. In terms of the philosophical jargon, this is completely consistent, right? It's not necessary that I exist. Reason being, it's logically possible that I couldn't have existed. It's not logically possible that a triangle could have not have had angles that are up to 180 degrees, right? I accept that distinction there, right? So it's logically possible entirely, yeah. So therefore, I am a contingent thing. I agree with that, right? Because I've just defined it that way, right? I am forced to accept it because if it's just a semantical thing, because if by contingent thing is simply that is logically possible to be otherwise, then I am a contingent thing because it's logically possible to be otherwise. But it doesn't have any meat in it to tell me whether it was physically possible to be otherwise, right? And I don't care about what's logically possible. I care about what is physically possible. It could very well be it's a physical impossibility, right? Now, some people may say, if something is logically possible, then it's not a physical impossibility, right? But in the sense that something can be physically, if something is logically possible, then it's at least physically possible as well. Well, no, I mean, it might be a physical impossibility, for example, for the laws of gravity to be suspended, right? Now, is it logically possible for the laws of gravity to be suspended? Yeah. Or by logical possibility, that what I mean here is that I can conceive in my mind the laws of gravity being suspended, right? If I drop my phone, I can imagine it levitate and not hit the ground, right? But is that physically possible? It might be physically impossible. Impossible. Literally, you can't have even one instance of induction, let's say inductive sample of evidence that can happen like that. And if that's the case, then that's renders the point moot. The point is, it might be physically impossible for the chain of what we say is contingent events, an infinite chain of contingent events to be any other way. Therefore, you don't need any of the further cause, because it's just physically just like that way. In other words, I am rejecting the application of principle of sufficient reason here simply because I don't think logical possibilities inform us about what's physically possible. So if there is one event and there's another event and there's another event, the fact that I can imagine all those events not existing at some point, therefore forcing me to accept the idea that therefore, if it could have been possible that the entire chain couldn't exist, the infinite chain couldn't have existed, therefore something must have made it come into existence. Yeah, if that's the line of thinking that I want to go into, I reject that simply because I have no reason to think that it was physically possible for the infinite chain not to exist. Right? That's it.
Okay. All right. Kelly, are you back? All right. Seems like Kelly is not back. We'll move on.
I don't know why people don't realize this point about the contingency argument. This is the most vital objection that I would raise against it, right? Just because something is possible logically doesn't mean it's possible actually.
Yeah, I think I do agree with that. I do agree with that, right? I mean, that's one of the objections to it, right? But I mean, I think both ways you can attack it, right? You can ask for all the possibilities. That have you exhaustively considered all the possibilities, and why you are saying that one possibility is the only possibility and not all the other possibilities? And then you can turn it over and ask that as well, the same question that you're asking. If it is logically possible, is it necessarily physically possible, right? And that's another way of tackling. And I think in both the cases, both the objections are, I think, pretty valid. I'm not quite sure which one is more effective. I think maybe what you're saying is more effective in the sense because we live in a real world in which physical possibilities are omnipresent in a sense, right? In that case, probably. But from a very purely philosophical perspective, I think both in my eyes, I think both have the same, what do you call, same power, right? Or
It's like
same.
saying the tree could have been the leaf of the tree is green because of chlorophyll and so on, and light, the way it absorbs and reflects light, and our retina and our code and rod cells in our eyes interpret it as green. That could have been different because it's logically possible that it could have been different. Therefore, it's contingent, right? Therefore, it must have a cause outside of itself. That is kind of what the contingency argument tries to say, right? Contingent things must have an explanation outside of it, either in and of, so explanations either are a result of things in and of themselves or outside of itself, right? An explanation, something that is self-explanatory, or does it need a further explanation, is necessary,
or a combination of two.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's difficult to. I don't think any contingency.
No, I think from a logical perspective, you can't discount that, right?
Maybe. I've not really thought about it that much, but possibly. So I think so. Something must have an explanation outside of itself or within itself. Yeah, and the fact that the tree is green and all this stuff, because it's not necessary. There's nothing necessary, because I can imagine it being different, and therefore it must have an explanation outside of itself. I think that's flawed. I don't think I can just because I can imagine the tree being different, that tells me anything about the processes of causation behind the tree. Right? It just doesn't. Can the tree actually be different, a different color? Is it physically possible for it to be a different color?
Is it physically possible for a tree to be different color?
I mean,
in this world, maybe not. In another world, maybe yes.
Yeah. I mean, there are trees with different colors, but I'm just saying.
No, I see your argument, but then
I mean, trees are the best example because there are actual trees in the world
that have trees with different colors. Yeah,
because of its texture, its composition, its chlorophyll levels. Or there's different types of chlorophylls. I think most of the time they're green, but there's actually different types of chlorophyll that does have a different sort of coloring effect. So it's not the best example, but I'm thinking about maybe gravity is probably a better example because we don't have an exception to that, right? And to say that there's nothing about these scientific processes that requires it to be this particular way rather than another way. For example, I can imagine E equals mc squared being different, or I can imagine the speed of light being different. Therefore, there must be some reason why the speed of light is that way outside of itself. I don't think any sort of armchair ponderings in your brain as a philosopher has any effect on causation, right? Maybe what you're talking about, you can imagine the speed of light being different. So what? That doesn't mean it actually could have been different. And that's the fundamental mistake people make. Just because I can imagine a pink unicorn doesn't mean a pink unicorn can exist. And similarly, just because I can imagine the speed of light being different doesn't mean the speed of light could have been different. And that is it, all you need to say for the contingent argument. It doesn't even get off its tracks, in my opinion.
Yeah, but then you're right now, you shifted towards the modal contingency argument, right?
Yes, that's right.
What if things would have been different? I think they're talking about the explanatory contingency argument, right?
So yeah, maybe I made a mistake there as to what they're talking about, because they never elaborate properly. So
right.
What is the explanatory contingency argument? I don't even know what that exactly is.
Everything has an explanation, or for its existence. Basically, that's the argument. I mean, I'm not saying that you stepped over way beyond what I think they kind of have messed up themselves, right? They're not quite sure. They started off with Kalam, then they moved over to some other one, and then they moved over to explanatory. I think they're not quite sure exactly which ones they're using. That's what I said at the very beginning when I put down the introduction to this part of the conversation, that they probably have no clue as to what contingency argument is or how many different kind of contingency arguments are there.
Yeah.
So right. they kind of have jumbled up in the sense. I think the easiest one that comes to everybody's mind, especially our Muslim apologist fellows, is the Kalam cosmological argument, right? That's the kind of contingency that they talk about, right? Which is probably a temporal contingency, rather than, and then as you move on to the explanatory or even the dependency contingencies, then things become a little bit more.
I'll tell you why I thought it was the modal one, because if you have a series of contingent, infinite chain of contingent effects, I can't see how on any other domain, any other type of
no explanatory, you can have a series of infinite explanations. Yeah,
exactly, that's what I'm saying. So I can't see, no, that's what I am saying. I can't see how you can object to that unless it's the modal one, because the modal one argues that even if you have an infinite series of explanations, it doesn't explain why the infinite series of explanations exist, right? It doesn't explain why the infinite series of contingent things exist, because you have this one big contingent infinite chain, and that infinite chain is contingent, and therefore that chain itself needs an explanation. So the modal cosmological contingency argument, the modal contingent argument motivates even the need to explain a infinite contingent chain of events. I can't see any other.
Right.
I can't see any other.
Yeah, I think this is an objection that probably not too many theists would like. That's how I would say.
Yeah,
they probably haven't thought about it too much as well.
If it's just that everything needs an explanation, then you do have an explanation that, because every part of that series is explained, right? Everything is explained in that. That's why it's an infinite chain. Now, why does the infinite chain exist? Is no more requiring an explanation than why does a God exist?
Yeah, I think it's the same. It's a dead end that neither you can surpass, and neither can theists or atheists or agnostics, or maybe atheists surpass, right? Yeah. Anyway, let's bring in KP in the discussion and see if he wants to jump in.
Can I just ask? Maybe I'm being a bit stupid here, but what does necessity even mean without modality? What's the difference? What is necessary? I thought modality is the only way to get. Maybe I'm being stupid here because I am tired. I had a full day's work. I've forgotten about contingency arguments. But as far as I can think right now, isn't modality, the modal thinking, the only way we can get to necessariness? That something in all possible worlds must exist. There's no other way it can be different. Therefore, it's an explanation in itself. Isn't it? Am I not right? Isn't that the? Or are they using a different sense of the word necessity? Are they using a different form of necessity? Because there are differences. Like there is what I used to talk about. What's it called? There is a factual necessity, right? Factually necessary. But if remember, if I was to mention something can be factually necessary, but in terms of modal logic, contingent. Right, but in that sense, God will only be factually necessary, but according to modal logic, contingent.
I think one other way that these guys use the term necessary is in terms, and they use the term necessary in that way generally, and what they mean by that is something that that is independent, something that does not depend on anything else. So the dependency contingency argument, they say in that they use basically that there are dependent beings and there is an independent being, and they use the word necessary for that independent being. And in that case, I guess it does not necessarily have to be modally necessary, but there has to be something independent, right?
Yeah. So you're right. Actually, I was being a bit stupid there. I actually know this as well. I've mentioned this before. Yeah. I just remembered when I started talking about factual necessity. When I mentioned factual necessity, I remembered again. There are different versions of necessity. Absolutely. Yeah. Carry on.
Yeah. So I'm sorry I didn't hear what Abbas actually said, but are we guys still discussing where Abbas actually sort of mixed up a lot of things? Moral argument, contingency argument, and all of that. We're still discussing that because
no, we moved on from that. But you can go back and discuss those if you have any points.
No. Yeah.
But
did Abbas say anything else?
No. Then from Abbas, the baton was passed over to Imran. Yeah,
Okay,
and then
Imran.
he said I think that's one of the things that I said, and I'll just briefly put it in maybe 20-30 seconds or so, is that they probably don't have any understanding of what
Yeah,
contingency
I heard
arguments
that.
are. Yeah.
I heard that.
And that's about it. Yeah, I think you take it over from there. I think he does
And
talk
Imran,
about
did
Imran
Imran
does
say
talk
anything?
about they are still talking about the explanatory contingency argument, basically, right?
Okay,
Something
so
requires
in a way,
explanation. Yeah.
okay. So I think the explanation one basically is kind of the dependency contingency argument, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
dependency. Yeah, dependency contingency. Yeah.
Dependency contingency argument. And
Mhm.
I think the problem with that dependency contingency argument is I don't have a problem with it. And I don't think that, but the problem is it doesn't prove God. That's what I would say. Because it's purely dependence based. I don't have a problem with that. You could argue that if because basically they rely on the impossibility of infinite regress, and they
Yeah.
would say, well, there should be something
Exactly.
independent at the end of this chain, and therefore, and it cannot go, infinitely, and there can be no infinite regress, and therefore there should be something independent at the
Yes.
bottom of reality. I don't
Yeah, I
have
was
a
gonna say.
problem with that.
Yeah.
I don't personally have a problem with that, but I don't think that independent entity, at least just from the dependency contingency argument, you don't go to God, you just go to this independent entity. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have to
Well,
say
I
about the dependency contingency argument.
I
Now, when
don't
you come to the
know.
modal contingency argument, problem comes because that is where I think they try to actually prove God with at least will or something. Because this dependency the contingency argument does not prove an entity which has will or consciousness or anything. That they can only try to prove through the modal contingency argument.
Well, I think Abbas tries here to talk about specificity
Okay.
and the way the universe looks. In other words, the nature of the effect, which is the universe, predicts. It's better predicted by if the necessary being is God versus non-God.
Okay.
So I think
So
that's
then
what
he
he's trying to
mixed it
do.
up. Okay. So then he mixed it up. Okay. So he did mix it up then.
Yeah, but I do think that there is a problem with the dependency. The idea that
Mm.
you must have an independent thing. You can just
Mm.
reject that if you think, for example, infinite regresses can happen. There's nothing logically impossible about it.
Mm.
When I say it can happen, I don't mean it's physically can happen. I mean what they're trying to do is say that it's logically impossible. And I have no reason to think it's logically impossible. That doesn't tell me that infinite can exist, because again, for the same reasons, I don't think things things can exist or not exist based on what's logically possible. That's just a little kind of thing that I'm doing in my head. I just don't see a problem, at least logically, with the infinite regress. That's it. But these guys need to be much more clearer, like Imran, when he's talking about because he sounds like the way he presented it, he sounds like he's talking about the modal contingency. You can't have a series of contingent things. It almost sounds like he's saying to me that you can't have the entire thing is contingent, therefore you can't just have a contingent thing, a contingent series of infinite
No, I
contingent.
think yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is he's confused about the causal contingency versus the explanatory contingency. I think he started off with the very big, explicit word explanation, right? And that's why I'm thinking that he's talking about the explanatory contingency.
I don't
While
like the word
he switches back,
explanation.
yeah,
I don't like the
Dependence.
word
yeah,
explanation because it's a
yeah.
very vague term. I don't know what they even mean by that. I mean, I think they try
No,
to
I think it's a
mean
fair word when
dependency.
you can
I
say
don't know. Yeah.
yeah, it's a fair word in my opinion, at least. You can say that something is explained by this thing, that thing is explained by this thing, right?
And
While
you mean dependency? Do you mean
yeah,
they depend on
dependencies,
it?
but yeah, but
Okay.
the explanation is
Okay.
dependent. Yeah, I mean, you can say dependency probably,
I mean, yeah,
So
in an infinite series, everything is explained and everything is dependent upon each other. That's it. What's the issue? You want to terminate it somewhere because you need something independent. You need to motivate. You need a motivating argument to show why. And I can't see any reason why, other than rejecting infinities in the first place. Actual infinites can't exist, or you can't get to the present. those similar arguments, Hilbert's Hotel, those are the things. That's it, right? I can't see any other reason why an infinite chain, any other argument for why an infinite chain can't exist. Yeah.
All right, then shall we move
Yeah, a
on
chain of
further?
contingent,
Yeah.
a chain of
Yeah.
contingent being a or codependent beings, I guess, yeah, could be independent as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, yeah, in a way you can say as a whole it's independent, but
Yeah.
it depends. I mean, now we're just talking about how we look at this thing, right? Is it just a series of
Yeah.
is it slices of many different things, or is it just one thing? You know, but if you know how are we viewing this thing, right? Right. You could say, for example, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Each letter is dependent upon the former. Each number is dependent upon the former. Therefore, there isn't any independent thing. So you can't say the chain is independent. But if you look at it as a whole, then you may say the chain is independent because it's not dependent on anything else. But reality is each part of the chain is dependent on something else. So this is just a matter of taste. Yeah, I don't know how to describe this thing, but you could argue it's independent. I would still say that each part of it is dependent. It's not. Yeah, at this point, language breaks down. Maybe I don't know.
All right then, Madan and Kali, shall we wrap up today's stream then? Maybe because it's a weekday, and then maybe have another
Yeah,
stream
we can.
over the weekend, because they have finished now the next they are gonna I think talk about something else. That's what I realized, and then probably this is a good segue to ending the stream, unless until there is someone waiting to jump on the stream, and then maybe have a 5, 10, 15 minute conversation on a sweet cordial note. We can end the stream. It seems like not too many are watching it because it's being a Tuesday, right? Or it being a Tuesday, or it's being a Tuesday, it being a Tuesday. So what do you guys suggest? Shall we open the stream for guest callers and then shut down, or maybe we can just shut down straight away? Up to you guys. Whatever your preference is.
It's up to you. I don't mind. I'm here.
Kelly?
Yeah, I think I will probably have to leave.
I think yeah. Well, then Madan, I think we'll end then, because we can have another stream over the weekend, and next stream would be anybody who's listening, who listens to it, is gonna be a Hindi Urdu stream, and we do have a few video clips in mind already, and we'll do that, and can't say for sure whether it's gonna be a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday, but one of these days most likely. And then yeah, see you guys then. But before we leave, I think what I'm going to leave you with is a message. As you know, we have an English only channel as well, and we haven't streamed on it for maybe over an year. It's called it's at youtube.com @unveiling faith. You can see it at the bottom banner. And then if you are capable enough financially, and if you feel like supporting us, then you can support us on patreon.com/Philo Sapience, or buymeacoffee.com/Philo Sapience. And if you are still a student and still want to support, then you can support us through just commenting here, or commenting under the video clip or the stream. Or you can use, if you're capable enough, you can also use YouTube's channel of memberships or super chats, super stickers, or whatever you may have over there, right? But your support is the major support is probably your presence, and bringing into notice our channel to others who probably would love to listen to our content, or are into philosophy and want to hear these arguments and haven't come across such a channel. I think, at least from my perspective, and I might be biased, but I would say our channel is probably very philosophically oriented, maybe one of those few channels in the world that has that brings both in Hindi, Urdu, and in English these arguments from a theistic perspective in general, but more so from an Islamic perspective, because that's what all of us know probably better than other religions. And so, yeah, if you can promote us in any which way, we'll definitely appreciate that. With that, thank you all for joining, and see you guys in the next stream. Ciao for now.
Bye-bye.